I hate capitalism.
Yeah, well, it's a hot issue and I'm getting hot about it too.
Now, it's just my opinion, so there is no need to get all hot and bothered by the statement. But when I look around the world, it appears to me that many of the problems we have are mainly down to the continual pursuit of profit and the enrichment of shareholders. Whether it's video games, housing, or really depressingly in my country, water.
Do not, my friends, become addicted to water. It will take hold of you, and you will resent its absence.
The system that allows companies to screw ordinary people, especially in a cost of living crisis, is despicable. I am biased, it has to be said, and I have tried to understand where others are coming from in their defence of capitalism, that it actually drives people on and inspires. But no matter which way I look at it, and no matter how good someone's intentions are, the system will always end up hurting those at the bottom and favouring those at the top. Naturally pushing businesses to squeeze harder and do it for cheaper, all in the pursuit of the bottom line. Without regulation, serious regulation, business will always push things to the limit. And funnily enough, capitalists don't seem to like regulation and will do absolutely mental things in order to tear them down and throw them in the bin. Now, there's no need to cry, capitalism simps. Your sacred cow is more than safe from people like me. In fact, one thing I will hand to capitalism is the way in which it is perfectly situated to crush all opposing ideologies. Once it has put down its roots, it is very hard to shift, which some of you may say is a sign that people like it and its popularity, whereas I would say that when the system runs on money, those with the most money have the ability to control it and silence the gobshites like myself. But hey, I'm sure you'll all be millionaires one day, won't you? And you wouldn't want those pesky taxes when that happens, so best support them now, even if it is you they are fucking. Just another temporarily embarrassed millionaire. Now understand that I am also a child of consumerism. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and no matter how much I know about it, and no matter how much I hate it, I like many of the things capitalism has provided. Which basically means that I'm stuck in a sort of continual black pill doom spiral of self-loathing. Even in my favourite hobby / obsession of video games, which is usually used as a method of escape from the drudgery of life, there is no escape. It has always been present. From the first point games appeared in arcades and were designed to be deliberately short experiences in order to encourage you to pump more coins into the machine, to the modern hyper mega turbo fuck you monetization fire hose blasting you in the nutsack. Recently I was playing Exo Primal, a game that I really enjoyed. From its mad premise to its quick-fire brainless gameplay loop, it was great fun, and the story was engaging enough for me to overlook some of the more rocky parts, and I played through about 35 hours to get to the end of it. That in itself is quite rare for me, as I don't often finish many of the games that I buy. But even though I enjoyed the experience, there was still that familiar little goblin hanging around, leaving its stink everywhere. The greed goblin had left shitty little skid marks on this game, in the form of battle passes, deluxe editions and day one cash shop purchases. And this is a game that admittedly is very light on those things, which is perhaps why they niggled me so much. They really didn't need to be there in a 50 quid game. Okay, like I said, it isn't very aggressive with it, but they are all there. Like a dying MMO, just waiting to start squeezing the whales before they dry up and die. The game is fun, but I'll be keeping an eye out to see where it all ends up. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised, but it does just further reinforce the fact that all these practices are so baked in now, so pervasive as to become the norm. When Fortnite operates their Battle Pass or another free-to-play game, it is one thing. The fact that they're included in full paid, full releases barely raises my eyebrows. For all my moaning about capitalism, that doesn't mean I don't appreciate a fair trade or some level of healthy commerce in general. Not so long ago I went to the Chippy to get some dinner. That's a fish and chip shop for any foreigners, where they sell you reasonably cheap, simple, filling and tasty food in the form of fried fish and other deliciously dirty stuff. While I was standing in line waiting to give my order, I was observing everything going on around me. It was lively and noisy. The staff were smiling as they served their customers, shoveling hot piles of chips into the paper they wrap it in and passing it across the counter to the customer. It was that act, seeing that parcel of hot food being passed from owner to customer, and the cash that passed back the other way that struck me as something beautiful. Fair and honest, a good even trade. I make this food for you and you give me a fair price, and the deal is done. A fair deal all round, satisfaction guaranteed, the beauty of trade. Keeping that image in mind, there was another game I played recently, a game that I also played for about 35 hours and basically completed the content that is available at this time. It was simple in its premise, it had a simple and enjoyable gameplay loop, allowing me to jump back in over and over, and it kept me wanting to play, much like Exoprimal. This game asked for very little and gave so much back in return. This game was hot, reasonably cheap, simple, filling and tasty. This game was fish and chips. This game was... Even opening the game is a pared back and simple experience. The title comes up and you are prompted to choose a character, and from there straight through the door and into the action. The premise is simple, and if you've ever played Vampire Survivors or any of the millions of snide knockoffs that started getting pumped out immediately as soon as people realised what lightning in a bottle that game was, you know exactly what you're in for. You start with a very simple attack and you kind of think, what is this shit? Before long you're blasting everything in sight with a multitude of automated attacks swirling around you. So far so same-y. But wait, there is a slight twist. What if Vampire Survivors but Diablo? Chasing Carrots have created something that embodies both of these things, and furthermore added an extra layer of 90s nostalgia. The graphics are beautifully dated, and I don't mean that to sound like an insult. I feel in order to get this game to look the way they did, it took some level of expertise. In terms of gameplay, what this marriage of game styles does is create something with the simplicity of Vampire Survivors that allows you to throw yourself into the action with a simple premise, but a little more control over what your character is doing. I feel like I am playing this game more than the other, like there's a little more skill required, and as such a little more reward for any skill you accrue while playing. In Vampire Survivors I find it is much more about learning which build you want, what you want to synergise, and rolling the dice to see whatever happens, and the satisfying part is seeing your build come to life in a demented disco ball of death and destruction. But where Vampire Survivors plays on a number of psychological tricks, bright colours, banging soundtracks and Fruit Machine style sound design to really push those dopamine buttons, Forza Torment pulls you down to earth with a squelchy, dark, demonic, bone-crunching thud. As you wander around one of currently 3 levels taking down skeletons, you pick up gems. So far so familiar. As you pick up more gems, your level meter rises, and each gem you pick up has a sort of chimey sound, and coupled with the sound of the skeleton bones falling apart, it sounds like you're rattling around with Charlie Kelly's jar of family teeth.
Yeah, can I get that jar of teeth now, please?
The background music drones along, and this game feels far more sweaty and immediate than Vampire Survivors. You don't need pulsing tracks here because after a few minutes you haven't really got time to pay attention. When playing Vampire Survivors, half the time I'm just grooving like a bastard in my seat. In Halls of Torment I find myself wishing that a dodge roll button would magically appear as I'm desperately trying to steer myself through the maelstrom. Each time your level goes up you can pick an upgrade. Sometimes they even come with downgrades as a trade for getting a higher particular stat at the expense of another. These upgrades are generally things like faster attack speed, general attack power, larger attack area, faster movement speed, defense, etc, etc. Each arena or hall, I guess, has a number of different missions to complete. Some are just kill X number of Y or reach level X with Y weapon, and others are more targeted, like you will have to actually find a point in the level in order to trigger a bit of storyline. Now I'll be honest, there is a storyline of sorts, but I haven't really paid attention. But the good news, you don't really need to. Just get back out there and crack some more heads. In between runs you can pump your gold into increasing your base stats, and as you play more and more you will actually open up new stats to raise, which was nice as the game kept opening up new options through my playtime. Once you complete some of the core quests, you can pick up items while playing and then send them up a well to some dude who will let you buy them from him and add them to the items you can use in your loadout. Each loadout is specific to each character you unlock, and each character has a different base weapon. You can only send one item up at a time and pickups are random. In addition to that, you can only hold 4 items outside of what you equip, so you have to start thinking about which items you want to send up the well. So you start calculating the risk of waiting later into a run to visit the well and send them up. Or do I send that item up now, lest I die and lose the opportunity? So there is a risk reward thing going on as well. Each level has a number of mini bosses or elites, and then one final boss at the end. It did take me a while to beat the first boss. You do have to think about your positioning a lot more than in other Survivor games. You do feel more of a feeling of achievement when you defeat that boss. So much like Exoprimal, I've spent 35 hours playing the game so far, and just like that game, it fed me new features at the right intervals to keep everything fun and enjoyable, and there is more content to come. But unlike Exoprimal, Halls of Torment, that has a much deeper system of upgrades, was probably more challenging to be honest, and didn't have any unskippable cutscenes.
The name's Torment.
But more importantly than anything else, it was less than a fiver, a fair trade. I will be dipping back into this to finish the few build ideas and collect a few more items I haven't secured yet, and I look forward to new playable characters and new levels that are coming down the road. I'll certainly be following Chasing Carrots as well to see what else they do in the future and perhaps visit some of their older games as well. But in closing, I would just say, go buy this game and support these developers.
Fish and fucking chips.